Hey guys, welcome to the webinar. I'm so excited to have everybody here with us today. Today we're going to talk about some awesome stuff. We're going to talk about how to trigger fat burning hormones, how to actually suppress fat storage hormones, probably even more important. We're going to get into some of the many reasons why people come to our office. I mean, people come in not just to lose weight, but actually that ends up being a side effect of some other things, like they're trying to get their digestive health right, or some other stuff. And so our objective today is pretty simple. What I'd like to try to do is really pack this with some information that you can actually use and that you can really understand, not only one, how to never have to worry about dieting again, but to focus purely on getting healthy. It is amazing how many other things will take care of themselves. So like I mentioned, we're going to talk about how to trigger fat burning hormones, how to reduce fat storage hormones. I think, some that bears mention is almost 3/4 of the people in this country are overweight. Now, that's not all just because we started eating too much. There's a lot of factors that most people don't realize. So we try to eat healthy and then we wonder, why isn't anything really changing? Or how come I used to be able to eat a certain amount and now if I eat the same amount, I gain weight? Or I eat 1,000 calories a day and I don't lose weight like I used to. And we think, well, I'm getting older, my metabolism's slowing down. And honestly, that's not really the case for the majority of us. There are different factors at work, and that's what we're going to cover today, some of those things. We're going to talk about obesity trends real quick, though, just to get a sense of this. I mean, if you look at a 25-year period from 1985 to 2010, we went from very few people really being overweight to almost a third of the country, 30% of the people in those states are considered obese, which is incredible if you think about it. And it gets worse every year, right? And most of us know why it gets worse, right? What do? We tend to eat things from box, bag, canned, anything prepackaged, processed foods. Doesn't have the nutrition we need, so our bodies think, oh, if we're starving here, so your body holds on to more and more fat. And we all kind of know that, yeah, we should probably eat more fruits and vegetables. Many of us try to, and it doesn't stick because we have cravings. We're going to talk a lot about that today. And some of us have done it for a year plus. I had a patient recently. She's like, I ate perfectly clean for 1 year. She's like, I didn't hardly lose any weight. I still had the same food allergies. I had the gluten intolerance and soy and dairy. And after doing a cleanse where she rebooted her gut and her whole body here, she basically now has no intolerances to any of those after 5 weeks. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. Another real important topic that no one really addresses is the effects that toxins in the environment have in our bodies. According to the EPA, if you can imagine, the average American has 400 to 800 toxins stuffed in a fat cell. Now, why is that a problem? Because if you go to lose weight, you end up pulling fat out of a fat cell, leaving toxins behind, and then what happens? Well, the toxins basically need to be diluted again. So what does your body do? Your body says, hey, I better get fat back in that fat cell as quickly as possible. It's called a rebound effect. Just toxins in food. The EPA estimates we eat about, what was it, 6 to 9 pounds of chemical food additives every year. And so where else do these toxins come from? Well, chemicals like in personal care products, lipsticks, lotions, shampoos, cleaning products. And by the way, what else do those toxins have an effect on? Well, they wreak havoc with hormones, right? They mimic, they bind them. These days, there's not a week that goes by we don't see someone coming in with a thyroid problem, or they went to the doctor and told you don't have a thyroid problem, but in essence they do. And that's something we do some screenings for and different assessments that if anybody's interested, I'd be happy to help shed some light on that for them. What else we got? Pesticides and herbicides and steroids, preservatives, antibiotics. I don't think this is news to anybody. They're all over our foods these days. But here's the thing. Your body's ability to detox, has it changed much in the last 500,000 years? I mean, you were designed to detox in a world, picture 1,000 years ago. Maybe campfire smoke you had to detox from. That was pretty much it. So we all know this, right? Box, bag, canned, wrapped, MSG, artificial sweeteners, food additives that are super common these days, which study after study have shown what? Well, artificial sweeteners, the more you use them, the heavier you get. Interesting, right? MSG, what does that do? Well, it literally lights the brain up. It's like a drug. So food companies put it in food. Why? So that you eat more of their food. Yeah, I mean, I saw a commercial for potato chips the other day, and it says, bet you can't eat just one. But if you go look at the ingredients, MSG in a couple different forms is in the ingredients. So is that illegal? No, but I would certainly say it's immoral. Right? We're getting heavier and heavier because we are literally being conditioned to do that. Something as simple as an Oreo cookie, 23 appetite stimulants in it. So toxins in our food, in our environment, end up in fat cells. So we go on a diet, and typically what do we eat when we go on a diet? Yeah, for the most part, we're eating things like prepackaged meals, a lean cuisine, a Jenny Craig, but read the ingredients. Yeah, most of it's dead toxic food. So we, in essence, get more toxic. Body starving, craves more, we gain more weight. This was my mom, my entire childhood. My mom was on a diet. All she did was go on a diet, lose weight. She got to the point, then she'd gain the weight back, then she'd lose it, then she'd gain it. And 20 years of dieting, she could eat 800 calories a day and not lose a pound. And that's some of what we're going to get into today. How does this affect your thyroid? In huge ways these days. So your thyroid needs a real simple thing, right? It needs some iodine. Now, where does iodine come from? Well, iodine typically comes from green leafy plants, vegetables. Seaweed's a good source of iodine. But what's happening to the vegetables in this country today? Well, our soil is pretty mineral depleted, so most of us don't get enough iodine. What's amazing with your body, though, it says, hey, what's similar to iodine? Well, chlorine, fluoride, bromine, those all are. So you'd imagine your thyroid will actually make thyroxine, the thyroid hormone, instead of out of iodine, out of chlorine. Now, I teach a class, we get all into this, but sometimes people have been told, oh, your thyroid's fine, but yet they're kind of gaining weight, they don't have any energy, they're sluggish, their skin's dry, their hair's thinning, outer third of their eyebrows are thin. And a simple nutritional trick can solve all of that many times. So I'm going to buzz through this because most people know this stuff. 10 reasons you might not trigger fat burning hormones. More importantly, which we're going to talk about, is the fat storage hormones that most of us has become dominant in. So we all know that we shouldn't skip meals, right? Because then your body stores fat from the big meal we eat at the end of the day. Refined sugars and grains can be probably our worst enemy. They create inflammation. They create imbalances in the gut. Some as simple as Cheerios, right? It's supposed to be good for us, good for our heart. Yet grains have been shown to be the #1 cause of high cholesterol and inflammation in the body. Improper food combining, forget like a cheeseburger and fries, even steak and potatoes can wreak havoc on the gut. And so we have plenty of information on that if anybody wants to know more. Overeating, now here's an interesting one. Overeating obviously is going to cause some weight gain. What most people don't realize is overeating is also stressful to the body. So what does the body produce? What hormone when it's stressed? Cortisol, exactly. So cortisol is a powerful fat storage hormone. This is why if you go to Walgreens and you look in the diet pill section, you'll see Cort8 and Cort Block and all these different things, most of which really don't do anything. Now here's where I start having some problems. People are like, all right, I'll give up my cereal and my bread maybe, but I don't know about this one. And that's alcohol. Just gets honorable mention, right? And no one's saying never have a glass of wine again, but it does trigger an insulin response and can cause weight gain. This one I get even more resistance with, and that's caffeinated drinks, particularly coffee and colas. And I'm going to spend some time on this because you need to understand the effect these guys have. I am not saying that a Coke once in a while is the enemy or it's going to kill you, or a cup of coffee periodically. It has antioxidants and there's some benefits. It's what it does to your digestive system over time that we're going to spend a couple minutes on here. In fact, alcohol, sugar, coffee, refined flour, all increase the pH of the stomach and kill off healthy bacteria. This is critical because the healthy bacteria in your gut do a lot of important jobs. I'm going to go over some of those. So over time, these foods, what do? Well, they decrease the amount of acid that your stomach can make. Now, why does your stomach make acid in the first place? Exactly, to digest your food. So if we can't create enough acid, we've got a problem. Some of the signs of having low acid in the stomach, believe it or not, one of the biggest signs is heartburn. We're all taught, well, we have too much acid, so we need drugs to decrease acid. Creates a host of new problems. But some common signs: indigestion, gas, bloating, deficiency of minerals, gut imbalance. You see where it says yeast imbalance there? That one is huge. We're going to spend some time on that. Food allergies, intestinal problems. So here's basically how it works. The food heads down your esophagus. Eventually, it's going to hit your stomach. Stomach tries to digest the food. The stomach goes, I don't have enough acid to digest this food. But a few hours later, what's it going to do? It's going to say, hey, I've got to contract and I've got to send this food on its way. Well, it tries real hard, but the valve at the bottom of the stomach says, I don't think so. This food is not digested enough, and I have to protect the intestine, this environment. where we've got 100 trillion or so healthy bacteria. So the valve closes. The valve leading into the stomach says, I don't think so. We're not going backwards. So you've got two valves snapped shut and a stomach contracting. So how do you suppose that feels? Well, that's what? Yeah, indigestion, right? That's like, man, this doesn't feel good. What's interesting is the food will try to back its way up because the valve at the top of the stomach is weaker. So what does that result in? Acid reflux. But that's okay, right? Because we have all sorts of medications for acid reflux. The challenge with that is, well, they're too numerous to even get into. Some include improper digestion of food, etc. Ultimately, your body needs to be able to digest its food properly. And we don't have too much acid. We just have acid in the wrong place. So this is going to affect gut health in a huge way. And this is critical to understand. Like I mentioned before, you have trillions of healthy bacteria. These bacteria do some really important jobs. They digest food, super important. They make B vitamins, right? What do B vitamins give us? Yeah, remember that? Energy. And so what's going on with Americans' energy today? Would you say we're as energized as we've ever been? Unfortunately, no. I mean, there's a Starbucks on every corner. We've got a section of energy drinks in the supermarket that 10 years ago I don't even think existed. So are we getting healthy bacteria in our gut? For the most part, no. And what ends up happening then, food will not get digested. Let me explain a little bit about that. Oh, by the way, what else do these bacteria do? Decrease blood pressure, alkalize the body. You can't even lose weight if your body's not alkalized. Most of us end up being more on the acidic side. They lower cholesterol, they detoxify the body, they kill bad bacteria, yeast, etc. So here's what happens next. Picture food traveling down the gut. The bacteria can't finish the digestion process because the stomach never really got it started in the first place, and now there's not enough bacteria. How do the bacteria get there in the first place? Anybody know? Yeah, they would get there by being breastfed. What percentage of Americans are breastfed 12 plus months these days? I've read as few as 2%, which I found hard to believe. So most of us don't have the right bacteria to begin with, or enough of them. And we grow up on a diet of what? Cow's milk, loaded with antibiotics, right? Sugared cereals, Pop-Tarts. We might have had a couple rounds of antibiotics for ear infections. So these healthy bacteria get wiped out. So what happens now is the food eventually hits its way to the pancreas. And now the pancreas, let's back up for a second, looks at this stuff and it goes, hey, I normally pump out a certain amount of insulin, but if I've got undigested food floating by me here, I'm going to have to kick in and I'm going to pump out more insulin to help break down this food further. Bacteria should have done it. They're not there, so they couldn't. So what's the problem with that? Excessive insulin equals fat storage. What else is that a problem with? Let's go back to this. Well, if my pancreas is constantly pumping out insulin, the cells in my body eventually become what? Insulin resistant. Now, when cells become insulin resistant, what does your pancreas need to do? Yeah, it needs to pump out more and more insulin. So what happens to an organ that's overworked over time? It's pumping out more and more and more. Well, eventually it gives up. And what disease are we on a fast track to becoming? Diabetic. It's one of the fastest growing diseases in this country today. We become diabetics because of what we eat, because of, in many cases, the pancreas overworking, cells becoming more resistant. So then we take drugs like glucophage and metformin. Ultimately, that whole digestive process isn't working well. That's stressful to the body. So the body produces stress hormones like cortisol. What does that do? Well, that's another powerful fat storage hormone. So to sum it up, the food's traveling down the intestines. It's not properly digested, typically results in gas and bloating. The pancreas says, I got to kick in. It pumps out more insulin, a powerful fat storage hormone. It gets stressful. We get more cortisol. And ultimately, we're insulin resistant, gaining weight, and wondering, man, what's going on? Now, what's interesting is many people have created an environment in their gut which is completely out of balance, but they don't realize it. So they go to eat healthy, and they're like, well, I've been eating healthy for a long time. There's no amount of eating healthy that really will reboot a gut and fix that problem without some kind of real attention to it. A lot of times I have patients come in like, Doc, I'm eating probiotics by the handful. Well, if the balance is completely out of whack, probiotics may be beneficial for sure. But if you don't start to kill off some of the bad guys and reboot and restore, a lot of times people are like, man, nothing really works. How come? That imbalance makes it difficult, if not impossible, to lose weight. And so 80% of chronic degenerative disease today, doctors are saying, comes from an imbalance in the gut. So not only is this, hey, this is creating a problem fitting into our favorite genes, but we've got some other disease processes that happen. Now, as we go further down the digestive system, food's still not really digested well. Now we've got yeast that start to take over, create an imbalance in the gut. They'll grow roots right into our intestines. Ultimately, what happens? Food starts leaking from the gut into the blood because it can't really be assimilated the way it should be. It's not small enough. What do we call that? Well, if you start leaking food from the gut into the blood, many people have heard this term, leaky gut syndrome. So picture what's going on. We have got now food chunks, literally, not like a French fry, but they're sitting in the blood. So what does the immune system do? The immune system says, hey, wait a second, that doesn't belong here. So it starts to attack. When your immune system's attacking your own blood, what do we call that? Autoimmune disease. I read recently there was 8 major autoimmune diseases back in the 50s. You know how many there are today? Over 80 of them. What are some of these autoimmune diseases? Well, I'll get back to that, but they cause things like allergies, right? I mean, I grew up at a time when a peanut couldn't have killed one of my friends. I'm probably dating myself though, right? So these days, we've got kids with gluten sensitivities and problems concentrating and ear infections and allergies and asthma, a lot of which is coming from imbalances in the gut. Autoimmune diseases, things like we've got celiac disease, which is the whole gluten thing. I mean, there was probably 20 years ago, nobody even knew what gluten was. We've got Hashimoto's, if this autoimmune, it affects the thyroid, or Crohn's, if it's the intestines, or lupus, fibromyalgia, scleroderma, the list goes on and on. So food that used to be like a nutritious thing for your body is now a foreign substance in the body, and it starts attacking itself. It also leads to imbalances where you might have yeast in the system. Right? So I'm going to go through a few slides of symptoms of an imbalance in the gut, or more yeast than should be there. So what I'd like you to do is just make a mental note or count on your fingers, right? You're sitting there alone, go ahead, count. Now, I'm not talking about what you have currently, but think, let's say the last 3 years. How many of these things do you have? If you have 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 even, probably not a big deal. Headaches is going to be on the list, and you can have headache just from being dehydrated. But if you see a trend where you got 5, 10, 15 of them, you run out of fingers and toes, you almost certainly have an imbalance in the gut. And that's why we do assessments in the office to help us figure this stuff out. So do you have allergies or have you in the last 5 years? Congested or runny nose, hives, headaches, diarrhea, weakness, cramps, irritability or depression's a big one, or migraines, increased sensitivity to food or chemicals. If you're gassy or bloated after you eat things, you're like, I can't even figure out any rhyme or reason. I eat anything and I'm bloated. If you have heartburn, ulcers, constipation, so less than 2 well-formed bowel movements per day would be the definition of that. Frequent sore throats, canker sores, sinus infections, yeast infections, man, it's full-blown by the time it invades other systems of the body. Rashes, anxiety, frequent bladder problems, cramps, muscle weakness, irritability, moodiness, restlessness, panic attacks. These are all symptoms of an imbalance or yeast in the gut. Here's a big area: inability to concentrate, fuzzy thinking, confusion. You're reading a book and you're like, I just read that paragraph 3 times. You walk in a room and you can't remember why you're there. Fatigue. If you crave sugar, alcohol, beer, wine, what do yeast crave? Well, they crave refined sugar and carbs. Many times people beat themselves up. They're like, I just can't beat my cravings. It might not be you who crave the sugar, but your physiology. I mean, that's almost impossible to beat unless you fix it. If you have changes in blood sugar rapidly, you're like, oh, my blood sugar's low, I don't feel so good. Yeast suck the sugar right out of your body. So those are some of the signs. An assessment will help you figure that out. And if you have this going on, it's very difficult to resolve some of the other things we've talked about, be it something like weight gain or some of the other autoimmune things or allergies, etc. So leaky gut will affect everything. It'll cause depression, anxiety. It can cause problems with the skin, thyroid issues, colon, adrenal fatigue, which is really huge these days. Adrenals affect thyroid, and we get joint issues and aches and pains. And the reality is modern medicine has an answer for all of these, right? There's some kind of medication. And I'm not saying we should never take medication, but I think if we could resolve the problem, we'd be better off. I think most doctors would probably agree with that. Another reason we don't burn fat, right? We do no exercise, we do the wrong exercise. The person I just described who's got a gut imbalance, they're not really even healthy enough to exercise. They're not absorbing food properly or the nutrition from their food. So they exercise, it's just more stress to the body. So when the body's stressed, what does it do? Exactly. It secretes cortisol. I have people walk in who exercise and they feel worse. They gain weight. They can't keep it up. And then they beat themselves up and they go, oh gosh, I just don't have enough willpower to exercise. It has nothing to do with willpower. If you feel like you're forcing yourself constantly and it doesn't give you energy, then you probably have some other things to figure out and get fixed so that you can be healthy enough to exercise. Stress is another big component in this. Many times people experience even a stressful period in their lives where their body just constantly produces cortisol, which is a fat storage hormone. And we have an amazing program in the office called SMT that doesn't eliminate the stresses in your life, but helps your brain process them differently. Sleep habits, for time's sake, I'm not going to get into that, but you should be asleep by about 10 p.m. because between 10 p.m. and midnight, your body secretes growth hormone, which is a powerful fat-burning hormone. A liver has got to function properly. If we keep putting toxins into the system, why is this one so important? Because all the fat that's ever going to be burned is burned in your liver. So how do you cleanse your liver so it can aid in weight loss? Well, one of the things we're well known for here is detox programs. Getting, like literally flooding the body with whole foods and specific herbs that give it what it needs so it can purify itself and ultimately you can get to your proper weight. So how do we do that? I'll tell you in a second, but first, many times people hear that and they're kind of concerned, like, I tried that whole eating healthy thing. I don't know if I have enough willpower. I could explain this in a lot of detail, but I'm going to give you the short version. Many times people don't so much not have willpower, but an imbalance in the body causes cravings, right? That's important to understand. If you have more yeast in the system than you should, you're going to be craving sugary, sweet things. So a body that's balanced or healthy craves healthy things. But we've got to get to that point. This is why so many people try to get a new healthy lifestyle. And we all know what that is, but then we try and we go, man, that just didn't stick. It didn't stick, not so much because you didn't want it, but because your physiology is craving the wrong things. Or if you have MSG or sugar in the system, right? Sugar causes craving. It's more addictive than cocaine. MSG will cause you, it'll end up living in fat cells, and all of a sudden you crave the things that you used to like. So you got to get that stuff out of the system. It's like being addicted to drugs. If you're addicted to cocaine, do you just wake up one morning and say, hey, I'm never going to have cocaine again? No, you got to go through detox. Well, if sugar is more addictive, it would make sense to detox from that stuff also. So short programs with whole foods, herbs that have been used for years and years in countries around the world. We use a line that's amazing. It's called Solution 4. They are actually grown organically in farms up in Utah. And cleansing has some cool side effects. Weight loss happens to be one of them. But most weight loss programs are all designed around what? Well, losing fat almost at the expense of your health. HCG and Fen-Phen and Weight Watchers and diet pills. And then what happens when we do those anyway? I've had people come in, have done 4 rounds of HCG. They're on less healthy than they ever were. It worked less and less each time. Now they're at the point where, you know, a 500 calorie diet, they can't even lose any weight anymore. So what's our focus? In a nutshell, very simple. It's to do what? It's to focus on really cleaning out the body. Because if you clean out the body, if you remove interference, toxins, and some of these stressors, all of a sudden the body heals itself. It doesn't want to be overweight. It doesn't want to have these cravings, but we got to force feed it the things it needs so it can now get healthy. Because if you're at your ideal health, you're going to hit your ideal weight. I can promise you that. But if you work on it backwards, I mean, there's no shortage of diet plans in this country, yet we're getting heavier and heavier. So surely dieting is not the answer. So what we do is we do an assessment and we customize a game plan, depending on how much support someone needs. There's no one size fits all when it comes to cleansing and detoxing. But the best part about it leapfrogs you sort of, so to speak, into a new healthy lifestyle where all of a sudden cravings change. I had a patient come in recently. He's like, Doc, I don't know if I want to hug you or kick you. He's like, Burger King onion rings used to be my favorite food in the whole world. He goes, I can't even stand them anymore. They don't even smell good or taste good because a healthy body craves healthy things. So if you'd like, I'd be happy to have you fill out this assessment. He'll point us in the right direction. We can do blood work if need be. Many times it's very simple. We can do short-term detoxes, a few days to a few months, really depending on what someone's goal is. But once you become clean and balanced, you could stay that way for a lifetime. That's the whole idea. So here's Dr. Oz kind of saying the same thing, right? Heal your gut, to lose your belly. And I think that's pretty profound, right? Most docs know this stuff these days. You know, what's going on here? Well, the naturally thin have different bacteria in their gut than the naturally fat. This is why they're actually doing something called fecal transplants today. I won't get into that, but it's about $35,000. And for a whole lot less, you can do that without having to, do a fecal transplant. So, hey, I want to thank you for watching. You can text us at the number you see on the screen, 602-859-6021. You can call the office, which is 602-866-8100, Platinum Wellness. I'd love to have you sit down if you'd like, schedule a complimentary consultation, spend 15-20 minutes together, tell me what your goals are. I'll tell you if there's something we can do here to help. We do a lot of other things at the office. We do physical therapy and chiropractic. We also do far infrared saunas if you want to pop in and try that. Burn about 600 calories in half an hour. Amazing for detoxing the body. It also improves immune system function, helps get rid of aches and pains. Do whole body vibration, exercise with oxygen therapy. We do body wraps that were developed by a biochemist at a UCLA that are for detoxing, cleansing out the tissues, help get rid of cellulite. We'll have people lose 1.5 inches off their waist in an hour. We do lipolite laser, help target specific areas. Lots of different things. Again, I'd love to see if I can just be some kind of resource for you. You pop in, we can chat, you can try any of the equipment. Hey, feel free to give us a call. Thank you so much. I have so much more to share, but I want to keep this as brief as possible. Have a fantastic day, and I really appreciate you tuning in today.